right, Scott Hamilton back with another interview here at Rockfile Radio, talking to Einar of Leprous. Long time coming, but I'm glad to finally have the time. How are you, my friend?
I'm very good. Out having an evening walk here in Norway.
What time is it in Norway? It's 1:30 here.
It's 7:30 in the evening.
Oh, so it's just before sunset. You still have some light?
Yeah. In the summer we have light until quite late here in Norway. It's especially in June, July, it's light here until almost midnight. So.
That would be something to get used to for us. So.
yeah. But then again, during the winter, it's the opposite, So then we have very short days.
Right.
Now we have long days during the winter, very short days.
Well, I got to give you congratulations before we dive into it. The new album is fantastic.
Thank you so much.
I know that it comes out August the 27th, so a lot of us have had it early, and everybody I've talked to, everyone who's had a chance to hear it, all thinks this is the next level thing for you guys. So congratulations on some great work.
Well, thank you so much. That's really cool to hear, especially since, the album has been done in such a different way.
Well, and let's get into that. Now, I've been a fan of you guys since Tall Poppy Syndrome, since the very beginning, and you have definitely evolved your sound and your stage presence during your entire career. But what made you do this one differently than you did the last couple? Because this is, if I could say, songwriting is a bit more concise. There's some new elements in there. There's some less ethereal stuff, but more, I don't know. You could probably explain it better than me. What was the thought process that got into creating this Aphelion album?
More or less nothing, to be honest.
We cleared our minds.
Yeah, but that's the whole point with this album. You stop thinking and you start doing, basically. So that's why I call it a very intuitive album, because we didn't even plan to do an album at this stage, because we had touring to do still for Pitfalls. We had quite a lot of other projects that we're going to work with that wasn't an album, Right. We're going to make an EP, so we had a few songs there kind of ready already when we started with what was supposed to be an EP. So in a way, the whole session for this album was very open-minded and easygoing, and I think you can kind of hear it in the album that it doesn't kind of it doesn't drag you in as much as kind of an album like Pitfalls does.
Right.
Like loose and open in a way that you can kind of just enjoy a bit more song by song there, and that's because all our other albums has been the result of one long process, whereas this album has been the result of 10 separate shorter processes. So and each song has been written and recorded in a quite different way, So we had no idea how the album as a whole would sound in the end, and that was kind of sort of like the fun part of it, that you just you just do something and you end up what you end up with without overthinking anything. And of course the reason we did it was COVID, and that we didn't have any tours on our schedule anymore, and we, instead of wasting that time, we used it for something. So
Now, the studio you recorded Castaway Angels, the video in, is that where you recorded all the songs, or did you record them at multiple places?
3 different studios.
So
the 2 songs that were more or less recorded before we started with this album was On Hold. It was kind of done more or less from the Pitfalls recording, but we decided to not put it on Pitfalls because we already had Distant Bells there, and we felt there wasn't space for 2 songs, quite emotionally heavy songs with a really slow build-up in one album. So we decided to keep, and it was a song that we're super happy with, so we knew that this one will be released at some point. We just needed to find a place for it. And then also Silhouette, more kind of up-tempo, shorter, lighter song. And the reason why we didn't put Silhouette on Pitfalls was just because it just felt a bit too light in the atmosphere.
Right, it just didn't fit, right?
Yeah. Like you can say many things about Pitfalls, but it's not especially light in the atmosphere. It's a quite melancholic album, and Silhouette, we just felt it's a really cool song, but it would fit better in either Malina or Congregation than it fit in Pitfalls. So then we decided to save it too. Then we started. We had a couple of other songs that we had thrown away for the Pitfall session, but we had already recorded the drums for it, and that was the Silent Revelation, one of them. And it sounded completely different. The original version of Silent Revelation, it was something completely different. And it had some potential, it had some nice things, and we kept a few things from the song, but then we built the whole song around the drums that Bård recorded for the original song. And then suddenly we had 3 songs, and all of these songs were recorded in the studio in Sweden, in Ghostword Studios. And then same thing happened with the Shadow Side. That was actually a different song that we tried to record for Pitfalls, and the only thing that we thought sounded cool about that song was the drums. So we threw away the rest and built a whole new song on the drums. And actually, one fun fact is that the drums on the Shadow Side were the drums we used to set the sound on Pitfalls. So it has a really good sound. Such a waste to not use that sound for something. And it's so there is nothing left of that original song except the drums, which we built a new song around and did some edits on the drums to make it work properly. But so yeah, then we had 4 songs, and then we decided to go into the studio to do this Castaway Angels project, which was like, we wanted to try something new, something much more intuitive than what we've done before. So me and Toro had been working a bit in advance on the song structure, just with an acoustic guitar and my vocals and some strings that I had programmed. But and we just went into the studio with no particular plan on where to take the song. So we just met there and we started playing together, and then we recorded it kind of live in the studio, and which we've never done before. And then suddenly we had 5 songs. So it was just like, okay, this is starting to look more like an album. So we just went on from there and okay, let's make an album into this. And then we started making song by song from there. And so usually, like, we made a song, we recorded the song, then we made a new song, recorded a new song. So it's just like, and the reason we went for Ocean Sound was because they had closed the borders to Sweden, so we couldn't go there anymore. And Ocean Sound always looked like such a beautiful place to record. So we went there and we were not disappointed. Such an amazing, inspiring place to be, and also very, very good technicians, great equipment. And then since we started, we thought about experimenting with trying also another studio, Söderberg Studios. And he's known for doing stuff like he's done like some Anathema records and different things, and we just always heard of him, and he's from Norway too. Lives in the same city as Simon. So we went there to record some stuff too, and some songs were even recorded in all different 3 studios.
So now that you've recorded an album this way, did you like it enough to do it again? Would you put another album together like piecemeal like this, or do you like the whole project thing?
Like I'm sure that like we're not going to do it exactly the same way again, because we learned a lot from this process. But I just don't like to do an album in a completely similar way. The only 2 albums where I felt we had, or actually like Bilateral Cold, quite similar process on each other. Then you have Congregation Malina, also quite similar process. Then Pitfalls was kind of a different process again, and Aphelion was a very different process. So I'm thinking that we learned that there are so many ways you can get a cool result and have some fun on the way, and not so it doesn't become too generic and that you just do things in exactly the same way always. So we haven't decided on how to. It's too early to say how we will do the next album now,
right?
Even before this one is out. So,
well, you talk about things sounding generic. The one thing I've always said about this band is they don't sound like anybody else. And I know you have influences and you have other, interest and things like that, but you guys really make music that sounds like it comes from another planet. And that's one of the things I love about you guys, because you don't sound like anybody else.
Well, thank you so much. I really like that's really cool to hear. Of course, as you say, it's you can hear some inspirations here and there,
sure.
Obviously, like you can with all music. But I think the key for that is to just stop caring, and you just do what you want to do, and you don't try to very hard to please people. And because I think that's the only thing you can do as a band, basically, is just to do something that is honest. And if it's good or not, that will just be up to the whoever is listening to it to decide. Like something
Correct.
Can be objectively very, very good, and still you don't resonate with it whatsoever. So it's just and that's why the only thing you can do as a band is to just be honest, to do your thing, and to not try very hard. And I think that's one of our keys. We don't really care that much about who will like it and who will not like it, because we know that there is always someone who's going to hate it, someone who's going to love it, someone who is going to be indifferent about it, no matter what we do. So it's just we cannot focus on that when writing music, basically.
Yeah, you basically have to make yourselves happy.
Yeah, exactly, and at least like it has to feel honest, and effortless, and it has to sound like we're not trying too hard to be this or that.
Right. You just want to be leprous.
Yeah, exactly. And if someone says that, oh, this sounds so leprous, then it's like, okay, it's like at least not the worst thing we could do is to rip off ourselves.
Right.
And that's and of course some people this reminds me so much of some band that I've never heard of in my life. I'm sure they've listened so much to them, and I'm just like, no, I haven't, but must be a coincidence or a bad comparison.
When I interviewed Thor a few years ago, and he told me that he basically grew up playing guitar in this band, that he was learning as he went along. Has writing songs with him and working within the band with him changed over the years? Has it gotten better, easier, that kind of thing?
Like it's like honestly, like the last records, I've mainly written the majority of the music by myself first. And it's not like such a band effort anymore, because, and it's not something we agreed to, like, okay, you will do the writing, I will do this or that. It's just like I just took great interest in composing, and Thor hasn't dived that much into it, so he's always a part of some songs here and there, but he doesn't compose that much for Leprous except writing lyrics.
So
he was a part of Castaway Angels on this album, and also, of course, we were all a part of this Nighttime Disguise project thing. But apart from that, he doesn't compose a lot.
Some great guitar tones, some great guitar riffs and sounds. I feel like we're embracing the guitar a little bit more on this album than we have a little bit in the past. What I said earlier about it being a little less ethereal, a little less ambient, and a little more to the point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes definitely 100% sense. But it's just like we take song by song and whatever makes sense for the song. It's never like we sit there. I never like, for example, on Pitfalls, which is probably the album you're referring to when you're talking about the less guitar-driven album. Mm-hmm. Is that like it's not like a decision we took together? Oh, we're gonna have very little guitars in this album, because there is quite a lot of guitars there. But
sure.
But everyone had a much more free role than they had on the Congregation and Malina, where I almost all the sketches that I wrote, had already written the guitar riffs ready. So on those albums, you will hear like they're kind of based on guitar riffs that I made, that I programmed and I made for the guitar player. Whereas this album here, on Pitfalls, especially on Pitfalls, the guitar players had a much more free role to do whatever they wanted. And quite often it was just like, maybe we don't actually need guitars on this section. We can just leave it as it is. And so it was just like, it was actually a more free process than before, actually. It was just like, you get a bit tired of just writing the same way, writing like, okay, you build it around guitar riffs, and then you just like, there's other ways of writing rock music than always basing everything around guitar riffs.
Right.
But this new album has been like, we played together more kind of in the studio. So it kind of, and Robin is also like taking quite a lot part creatively in shaping his guitar ideas. And it typically, if I make a sketch ready myself at home, for example, that is kind of the song from A to B, but without all the details. So typically maybe with some vocal lines and kind of a slightly more simplified version of everything, basically. And then I present it to the band, and then they typically do their thing on it.
Right.
And sometimes it can be like, okay, no, we didn't find anything. Okay, then I can make a riff like as you can hear, for example, the Silent Revelation, for example. That riff there is something that I programmed, and you can kind of hear it's a typical me programmed guitar riff that you can recognize from The Flame or from The Sky is Red, or like a bit this two-string is type of riffs.
Well, like I said earlier, I got the album and I've been a fan, so I'm always excited to get a new album from you guys. But this one, I got to tell you, I've listened to it more in the last couple of weeks than I did the last two albums in the first couple of weeks. Some things grow on me and it takes a little longer. This was like an instant, oh my God, this is so good.
That's cool. That's cool.
And I like both. I mean, I like movies that I have to watch more than once. I like albums that I have to listen to more than once. I like complicated, things that that test me, that kind of challenge me a little bit.
Yeah.
And not that you didn't on this album, but this was just immediate. It just went right into my soul, right through my ears.
That's awesome.
And I just, every song, I just couldn't believe that. It feels like the culmination. Like this is the signpost on the Road of Leprous, how you've gotten here and everything that got you here.
Yeah, I kind of agree with it. It's a very unifying album, I would say. Like, and when I think it can really kind of appeal to both our new fans and our old fans.
I agree.
So it's exactly what I would say. Like, if it's an album that you would, what's Leprous all about? And that's an album that you could, here you will get quite a lot of the picture, for example, if you put on that record.
Right.
But if you put on Bilateral, you will just get a small part of the picture of who we are. And same with Pitfalls, you will just get a small part of the picture of who we are. Even though, of course, Pitfalls consists of songs like Alleviate and The Sky is Red on the same album, which are quite opposites when it comes to sounds. But yeah, I definitely think that Aphelion is it's like, despite that we didn't make it as any type of concept album or anything, it still kind of feels like an album, like without too many kind of standout songs. It's just like it's an album that it's like, despite that it wasn't meant to be an album, it kind of works best as like an album.
Yeah, I get that.
Know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah. We don't have like any like big hit songs like for example Below and Alleviate, or maybe Castaway Angel could work a bit like that, but that was definitely not the intention with that song. It was just supposed to be a calm, peaceful song.
But the reaction to Silent Revelation so far, I think that's going to be a big one. I really do. We put it on the radio station today, so.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
And we're still playing Running Low, so now you have 2 songs in current rotation. How cool is that, right?
That's very cool. That's very cool. But Silent Revelation, it's also like it's going to be well received and has been well received in our circles, in our scene. But songs like Below, it can appeal very easily outside of our scene, for example. That's what I meant when I said but of course we have songs that are like very popular within our own scene as well. So like my uncle and aunt who couldn't care less about prog music, they could easily listen to and enjoy Below, or Alleviate.
Right.
And probably also Castaway Angels, but Silent Revelation would be harder for these people to digest because it's a lot more stuff going on there.
A little more complicated.
Yeah. I mean, in a different, like for me, I would say that Alleviate is maybe the most complicated song for me to perform live, but that's because of the vocals.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Alleviate for me is extremely challenging to sing, and it's not that easy to play either for some reason. It's just like so it's typical that, like, for us it's really easy to play stuff like The Sky is Red because we've done this for ages. Like, we're a prog band, we're very used to this way of performing. But when we have to play stuff like I Lose Hope, then we have to rehearse because it's a completely different groove and vibe than what we're used to doing, and so yeah.
One thing I've noticed about Leprous, especially the last several albums, dynamic range plays so much into your music. We're coming out of the loudness wars of the early 21st century. A lot of streaming stuff is horribly compressed, and you guys are heading the opposite direction. You go from quiet whisper moments to these big, loud, cinematic, chord changes and epic feelings in the songs. How much does that come into? I mean, I know you write the songs to benefit the song. You add whatever it's going to make. But how much of that involves, we want to get this so quiet here and we want to get it so loud here? That's almost a trademark of Leprous now.
Yeah, and I think like we want to think a bit more like how to tell a story and how to create like a tension and release feeling. If you put everything on max constantly, which you hear a lot of in the prog these days. For me, like if I go on this progressive metal playlist on Spotify, for example, and I just put on shuffle, and some artist I haven't heard of comes, and typically I will hear, okay, all the drums have been sound replaced. There is like all the guitars are just like a digital, like either XFX Campers. Which are all great things, but when that's the only thing, the dynamics completely disappear and there's no air left in the music.
Correct.
So for us, it's really important to have the contrast, and you will see that even when you watch like grandiose series like Game of Thrones, for example, you will you will see them there's quite a lot of build-up there going on before there is a big release, for example. So we don't want to write music in the style of Fast and Furious movies where everything is on maximum constantly and the story doesn't really matter. It's just lots of effects and fast cars,
Right.
For us, it's important that there is some sort of tension release going on, and dynamics it's such an important element for us to play with. And I think I would like something that is really heavy sounds much heavier if you make people wait for it.
Right.
So instead of just like, okay, I'm going straight on the most heavy section, and then I just keep it there throughout the whole show, and suddenly it doesn't feel that heavy anymore. You just got used to it and got tired of it,
Right.
So contrasts.
I find the same thing, that I get some music that's just, it starts at 11 and goes nowhere else, and it gets very fatiguing after a while. I mean.
Yeah.
And I understand some metal bands want to do that. They want to hit you in the face and just keep pummeling you, but that's not always my type of music. I like
no. Exactly. And then you see the drummer on stage. He's barely hitting the drums because it's also triggered that there is like zero energy coming from the drums, like barely hitting the drums because it's necessary for playing it fast enough on the bass drums.
Right.
So it's just like no power in the playing. So it kind of is just something strange about that for me with the energy, like
I totally agree.
Something that is supposed to be super energetic, and then you see the drummers barely touching the drum kits, and then still out of the speakers, like bang, 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 and like with insane amount of click in the bass drum.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there is a time for everything, but for me, like, I can really love metal music, but it's like very often I find it to be too calculated and too dead.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
That's why we tend to like progressive metal. It's got more stuff going on, right?
Yeah, exactly, but that also tends to be very calculated sometimes.
Sometimes, yes. Some prog bands are just proggy to be prog, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So exactly. So that they've been sitting on the computer, moving every single bar, like every single hit on the drums to be perfectly on the grid and everything, and there is no life whatsoever left in the music. So.
I'm glad you feel the opposite way about that when you make music. I think it's wonderful.
We have maybe a bit of that perfectionism in us too, but not that much.
Well, I know you've probably got to run. You've probably got other interviews, but thank you so much for taking the time today and talking about the new album. It'll be out on August the 27th, and I hope with things hopefully are opening up, we get a tour soon.
Yeah. I would really love to. Really love to come back to the States and to Florida. And
well, come on back and we'll sit down and have a cold one.
Awesome. And please keep the hurricanes away when we come.
Absolutely. I'll do my best.
Okay. Thanks.
Well, enjoy the rest of your evening walk, and thanks for taking the time, Einar.
Thank you. Take care, man. Thank you. Bye-bye.